It begins without warning, chosen one. One day, you notice the way conversations shift when you're near. The glances linger longer, the pauses between questions grow heavier. And then it happens, the words spoken softly but with certainty. You're a genius. You're taken aback, perhaps, because you've never claimed that title. But it is not an accident. It's not flattery. It's not empty praise. It is recognition. Something in you has sparked a truth in them. The women you encounter aren't calling you a genius merely for your words or logic. They aren't responding to textbooks you've memorized or philosophies you've quoted. They are responding to your energy, your depth, your alignment, the quiet way you move through the world with power humming beneath the surface. Your high sexual energy has become an atmosphere around you, electric and magnetic. And in this atmosphere, they find themselves elevated, awakened, inspired. What they feel is not just attraction, it is activation. In your presence, their minds light up, their ideas sharpen, their confidence expands. They feel more beautiful, more expressive, more capable. They speak differently, they laugh louder, they dare to dream bolder, and they look at you with the astonishment of someone who has just encountered a rare frequency. That frequency, chosen one, is your awakened masculine energy infused with consciousness. It's intelligence that doesn't separate from the body. It's thought that moves like instinct. It's awareness so potent it can't be ignored. They call you a genius because they don't know how else to describe what they feel. They say it out loud because your presence rearranges their perception of what intelligence even looks like. You've transcended the stale idea that genius must be dry or detached. You've become the embodiment of a living genius. Mind, body, soul aligned in one continuous current, and they feel it. Not in their head, but in their body. This is why the women who cross your path speak of you in whispers and wide-eyed tones. You speak and they hear poetry in your restraint. You laugh and they feel layers of insight under the sound. You touch the world, and the world ripples. It's not a performance. It's not even intentional. It is simply you being fully you, present, precise, and utterly awake. This spark of recognition is sacred, and it is not meant to feed your ego, but to signal your readiness. You've reached a level of embodiment where your genius no longer needs to be proven. It reveals itself through your energy, through the way you sit in silence, through the way you hear what others can't say, through the way you make people feel more intelligent by simply standing in your presence. You are not a genius because you know everything. You are a genius because you see deeply, you listen completely, you move with clarity, you speak with intention, and because of this, you activate in others the wisdom they forgot they had. You are a mirror to their potential, and they are drawn to you not just because of who you are, but because of who they become around you. You are the chosen one, and the genius they see in you is the reflection of a mind that is no longer disconnected from spirit, a body that is no longer divided from awareness, a man who has finally become whole. There is a difference, chosen one, between raw energy and refined essence. You've walked through the world with your high sexual energy for some time now. You've felt it surge beneath your skin, pulling attention, stirring reactions, lighting fires in the eyes of those who passed you. But now that energy has evolved. It's no longer wild for the sake of being wild. It has matured. It has integrated. It has become your signature. The women who meet you now don't just feel heat. They feel frequency. They sense that your energy is not just physical. It's intelligent. It's sharp and intentional, alive and fluid. It's the kind of presence that makes them rethink what masculinity is even supposed to feel like. You do not dominate a room. You influence it invisibly. You do not overpower those you meet. You invite them, gently, confidently, completely. What you're carrying is more than just magnetism. It is creative force, woven into your breath, stitched into your gestures, humming in the stillness between your words. Your high sexual energy is not the kind that drains or depletes. It is the kind that builds. It stirs ideas, it unblocks emotions, it plants inspiration, it makes people around you come alive again. That is why they call you a genius. Not because you explain everything, but because you awaken understanding without speaking. They feel smarter around you, not because you lecture them, but because your energy invites clarity. They feel seen, not through the eyes of a critic, but through the gaze of a man who notices everything but judges nothing. And in that gaze, they soften, they shine, they open. Your energy has become a language, and it speaks directly to the feminine. It says, I do not fear your power. I do not shrink from your radiance. I meet you where you are, not to change you, but to remind you how complete you already are. And in that silent conversation, she blooms. She drops pretense. She reveals truth. And then, almost without thinking, she calls you brilliant. Because how else can she describe someone who creates space for her most powerful self to emerge? This is not manipulation. This is not strategy. This is simply what happens when you stop chasing approval and begin embodying coherence. When every part of you, your thoughts, your breath, your posture, your purpose, moves in unity, people feel it. They don't just see your intelligence, they experience it. And it's not cold, it's charged, it's not clinical, it's creative, it's not aloof, it's alive. This is the essence of your energy now. Genius not of the mind alone, but of the whole being. And this genius is not something to boast about, it is something to steward. Because the more aligned your energy becomes, the more powerful your impact grows. And the world, especially the feminine, is watching closely. You are the chosen one. And now that your energy has become a channel of insight, connection, and transformation, genius is no longer a label they give you. It's a truth they feel, without needing to understand why. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, chosen one. Knowledge is collected, gathered, acquired through reading, repetition, and the accumulation of facts. Wisdom, however, is earned. It is shaped through lived experience, forged in solitude, deepened through suffering, and honed by stillness. And now, because you have embraced your high sexual energy, not as a weapon or a trick, but as a sacred current of life force, that energy has begun to blossom into wisdom. What once stirred restlessness in you now brings you peace. What once scattered your focus now grounds you. And in that stillness, women begin to see something far more powerful than charm or intelligence. They see depth, they sense clarity. And that clarity, chosen one, is what they are calling genius. Not because you parade your intellect, but because your very presence brings insight. You speak less, but your words hit deeper. You no longer speak to dominate, you speak to align. You have learned that wisdom is not about knowing the answers. It is about knowing yourself. And in knowing yourself, you become a tuning fork for truth. People feel different after speaking to you because your energy does not reflect confusion, it reflects clarity. You don't need to solve everyone's problems. You remind them of their power to solve their own. You don't give advice to gain attention. You offer reflection that activates realization. You remember who they are, and they walk away remembering it too. This is the genius they feel. It's not the academic kind. It's not the loud or performative kind. It's the kind that lives in the body. It moves with the rhythm of intuition. It speaks when needed and remains quiet when silence serves better. It's in the way you respond to chaos without becoming part of it. It's in how you stand calmly in a storm, not because you deny its force, but because you trust your roots. That trust, deep, unshakable, quietly radiant, is what others interpret as intelligence beyond explanation. And this wisdom you now carry, chosen one, is born from your relationship with your own energy. You've stopped chasing temporary highs. You've stopped feeding empty fires. You've stopped leaking your attention into things that do not nourish your soul. You've begun to live with intention. You've started to listen more. You've begun to feel more. And in doing so, your energy has become dense, not heavy, but rich, alive, awake, and deeply affecting. Women feel this. When they are near you, they do not just feel attraction, they feel awakening. They see themselves through your gaze and feel more beautiful, but not just in body. They feel beautiful in soul, in voice, in essence. Because your wisdom does not judge, it honors, it does not compare, it celebrates. And in that field of celebration, they rise. You don't have to tell anyone you're different. You live differently. And those who are ready for truth will see you, not just as a man, but as a lighthouse. A reminder, a reflection of what is possible when power becomes purposeful. You are the chosen one, and your wisdom is not merely in your thoughts, but in the way your energy touches lives without ever needing to explain itself. There was a time, chosen one, when influence was measured by volume, when those who shouted loudest were heard, and those who controlled the most were followed. But you have transcended that old paradigm. You have arrived in the rare space where your influence comes not from force, but from frequency. You no longer need to convince, argue, or perform. Your energy now does the talking. When you enter a room, there's a pause, not because of your appearance, but because of your presence. People turn without knowing why. Conversations bend toward you, attention shifts, and those who stand near you feel something magnetic, an unspoken pull. Not because you demand it, but because you carry the kind of energy that others instinctively trust. You don't beg to be followed, you lead by resonance. Women especially feel this. They feel their nervous systems relax around you. They feel their thoughts sharpen. They feel seen, but not watched. They feel challenged, but not judged. And in that subtle balance of intensity and grace, they whisper words you did not expect to hear. You're a genius. Not for what you said, not for any grand performance, but for the way they feel more alive just by being near you. This is not about seduction anymore. This is about influence at the soul level. You've refined your high sexual energy into something that does not grasp, but guides. It doesn't pressure, it prepares. And this influence is not flashy. It's not theatrical. It is the influence of a man who knows who he is so deeply that others begin to question who they've been pretending to be. You are no longer reacting, you are responding. You are no longer trying to impress, you express. You don't seek validation, you radiate alignment. And that alignment is why women begin to share more, trust more, become more, because they sense they are not being manipulated. They are being met, fully, completely, without disguise, without games. Your influence now flows from energetic coherence. You don't say one thing and mean another. Your walk and your words are one. Your intent and your impact are aligned. And that alignment creates trust. That trust creates devotion. That devotion in turn creates transformation. Not just for those who love you, but for everyone you interact with. Your very presence becomes a catalyst for change. But you do not carry this influence carelessly. You've learned that with every moment of attention, there is responsibility. With every woman who opens to you, there is a choice. To feed your ego or to honor her soul. And you've chosen to honor, again and again, even in silence, even when no one sees. That integrity, that is what they are calling genius. Because most people can move crowds, but very few can shift energy without speaking. Very few can light a fire in another simply by being clear in their own. Very few can leave behind not memory, but momentum, the kind that others carry with them for days, weeks, or years. You are the chosen one. And your influence no longer comes from how many follow you, but from how many find themselves more fully after walking in your presence. There is a moment in the path of the chosen one when you realize you are no longer just a participant in the world. You have become an agent of transformation. This shift happens quietly. It doesn't require a stage. It doesn't announce itself with fame or fanfare. It begins the moment you walk into a room and the room feels it. The moment your presence alone alters how others think, speak, or carry themselves. And more often than not, the ones most aware of this shift are the women who cross your path. They cannot always articulate it. Sometimes they say it playfully, sometimes reverently. But the phrase echoes more frequently now, doesn't it? You're such a genius. It slips from their lips like instinct. They say it not because you recite facts or because you overwhelm them with knowledge. They say it because something shifts when they are near you. And that shift, that is the sign of your mastery. Your high sexual energy has matured into something rarer than attraction. It has become inspiration. You are no longer trying to change people. You no longer have the need to fix, correct, or guide everyone you meet. Your wisdom is quiet. It doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't dictate, it demonstrates. You don't persuade with words anymore. You embody truth, and those ready for it begin to awaken in your presence. Your life is the message. Your stillness is the sermon. The women who feel this aren't being drawn to you by appearance alone or even by charm. They're responding to the freedom your energy creates. Freedom to be intelligent, sensual, creative, chaotic, gentle, and wild, all at once. You've become the type of man who awakens the higher self in others simply by being grounded in his own. And when a woman feels that, when she suddenly sees more in herself because of how you see her, she calls you a genius, not out of flattery, but because she feels smarter around you. Not because you taught her something, but because you reminded her of what she already knew. That is your power now. Not to impress, but to awaken. Not to dazzle, but to illuminate. And you must understand that this level of influence doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being present, from being available to truth, to discomfort, to the moment as it is. Because your energy is no longer interested in manipulating reactions. It is interested only in aligning with what is real. And people, especially women, are drawn to what is real, like flowers are drawn to sunlight. You inspire change not because you tell others what to do, but because they watch how you live. They feel how you listen. They notice how you carry your integrity through your posture, your tone, your gaze. You are no longer trying to be the smartest man in the room. You are too focused on being the clearest. And that clarity is what turns heads, opens hearts, and sparks movement in places that have long been stagnant. You are the chosen one. And your genius is no longer measured by what you know, but by the space you create for others to remember themselves. At this point in your journey, chosen one, your energy carries a weight that extends far beyond attraction. It is no longer a question of whether people feel you. They do. The moment you speak, the moment you listen, the moment you simply stand still, the atmosphere shifts. But now, with that awareness, a deeper question begins to emerge. What will you do with this power? Because power, true power, is not in what you can control. It is in what you can be trusted with. And the reason women now call you a genius, speak of you with a mix of admiration and awe, is not only because of how you affect them, it's because on some level, they trust you. They trust your energy, your mind, your presence, and most importantly, your intention. That trust was not given blindly, it was earned. And it was earned through integrity. You've reached a place where your choices matter more than ever. Every word you speak has impact. Every boundary you hold echoes. Every moment of honesty reinforces the architecture of your legacy. Your high sexual energy, once chaotic or untamed, has now become something sacred. It's no longer about desire, it's about direction. It's no longer about conquest, it's about contribution. You've learned that the path to real genius is not paved with manipulation, but with meaningful restraint. You could impress, but you choose to inspire. You could take, but you choose to uplift. You could seduce, but you choose to honor. And that is where the genius lives. Not in the sharpness of your mind alone, but in the purity of your intention. In the steadiness with which you walk, even when temptation surrounds you. In the way you say no, not out of fear, but because you respect yourself too much to scatter your energy. Women feel this in you. They sense that your energy, while potent, is not predatory. It is protective. It is present. It is precise. And that precision, your ability to be exact in where and how you give your time, your attention, your insight, is what elevates you above the rest. You've become the man whose yes is gold, because your no is rooted in truth. This is not a performance. This is embodiment. And embodiment is what transforms attention into reverence. It's the difference between being watched and being respected. It's the difference between being chased and being trusted. And now that you've stepped into this level of clarity, you're no longer just a man with strong energy. You are a man with directional power. And that power changes everything. You no longer measure your impact by how many are drawn to you, but by how deeply your presence allows others to meet themselves. You're not the light they worship. You're the mirror that reflects their own glow. That's why they call you genius. Not because you shout your worth, but because your stillness reveals theirs. You are the chosen one, and the path you walk now is not about proving your greatness. It's about protecting it, shaping it, and offering it only to those who are ready to rise with it. There is an intelligence, chosen one, that cannot be taught in books or unlocked in classrooms. It cannot be passed through titles, credentials, or borrowed language. It is the kind of intelligence that comes only when you have stood face to face with your own power and chosen again and again not to misuse it. It is the intelligence of restraint. And it is that quiet, unwavering restraint of word, of movement, of energy that now has women calling you a genius. Not because you say the perfect things, but because you know when not to speak. Not because you act out a performance of strength, but because your stillness says more than force ever could. The feminine does not crave a man who reacts. She craves a man who remains. And you, chosen one, have become that rare presence, a man who remains centered, collected, and undisturbed in the heat of the moment. A man who no longer trades his energy for attention, who no longer proves his worth through action, but through alignment. Your high sexual energy, once wild and impulsive, has become silent thunder. It hums beneath your skin, noticeable but contained, available but not given freely. And that containment, that ability to hold charge without release, to maintain heat without burning those around you, is what women now recognize as brilliance. They feel your potential to shake the ground beneath them, and yet you choose not to. Not because you are cold, but because you are conscious. There is genius in the way you hold yourself now. You no longer press forward into spaces that do not invite you. You no longer seek to convince, seduce, or impress. Your restraint is not fear, it is precision. You have nothing to chase, no truth to force, no identity to perform. You are clear in who you are, and that clarity allows others to come toward you freely, unmanipulated. That is the apex of influence, not in how you attract others, but in how you inspire them to choose you willingly. Women sense this deeply. They feel it when you pause rather than push, when you listen rather than interrupt, when you wait, not out of hesitation, but because you are attuned to the natural rhythm of connection. This restraint, this grounded patience, is what allows their feminine essence to bloom. They are no longer forced into expression. They are drawn into it, and in the space you hold, they find themselves stepping into depths they didn't know they had. This is not just about magnetism. This is about mastery, and mastery, chosen one, is not about doing more. It is about doing less, with more intention. It is the art of becoming so aligned, so deeply sovereign, that your mere presence becomes its own invitation. Women feel safe in your orbit because they know your power is disciplined. They call you a genius because they sense that what you withhold is greater than what most ever give. You are the chosen one. And now your restraint is no longer an absence of action. It is a declaration of depth, a signal that you no longer burn to prove, but simply burn with purpose. There are words, chosen one, that never need to be said aloud, and yet they linger in the air long after you've walked away. They live in the spaces between your sentences, in the deliberate way you choose silence over noise, in the patient gaze that sees without demanding. These words are not voiced, they are felt. And it is this felt presence, this unspoken brilliance, that now leaves an echo in the hearts of those you meet. This is where your genius speaks loudest. Not in argument, not in persuasion, but in the atmosphere you create. You've become a man who no longer argues to be right. You are simply in rhythm with truth. And that rhythm leaves a mark. People walk away from conversations with you questioning not your opinion, but their own depth. They feel sharper around you, more thoughtful, more reflective. Not because you offered them a lecture, but because your silence invited their own wisdom forward. Women in particular sense this echo most clearly. They may try to explain it with compliments, calling you insightful, brilliant, even genius. But what they're really describing is how they feel in your presence. There's a clarity that returns when you are near, a tension that softens, a veil that lifts. And in that clarity, they reconnect to the parts of themselves they didn't realize they had forgotten. This kind of impact cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It can only be embodied. And embodiment, chosen one, is what you now offer with every breath. Your high sexual energy, once a spark, has matured into light. It doesn't blind, it doesn't flare, it illuminates, it warms, it reveals. And because of that, people don't just feel drawn to you, they feel seen by you. And what is genius, if not the ability to see clearly what others miss? You no longer need to correct or confront to shift a conversation. You simply show up in truth, and the energy of that truth realigns everything around it. You are no longer trying to impress others with how much you know. You are revealing yourself through how deeply you feel. And in that feeling, others remember who they are. This is your new frequency. Not just power, not just peace, but presence that lingers. Presence that awakens. Presence that reminds. You've become the quiet whisper in someone's mind long after the interaction has ended. The question they can't shake, the memory they revisit, the standard they compare others to. And not because you demanded it, but because you offered something real in a world flooded with the false. You don't chase understanding, you don't compete for recognition, you don't interrupt moments, you deepen them. And that deepening is where your genius speaks. Without noise, without ego, without needing to be named, the echo of your presence does the speaking for you. You are the chosen one. And now your impact no longer depends on being heard. It endures because you have become the kind of man who doesn't need to be remembered to be felt forever. There comes a sacred moment in your evolution, chosen one, when your energy no longer merely attracts, it liberates. You begin to see it in the eyes of women who encounter you, the way their posture shifts when you enter the room, the way they start to speak more openly, laugh more freely, and exude a kind of feminine radiance that wasn't present just moments before. They aren't performing for you, they're responding to you. And what they're responding to isn't just your confidence or your calm. They are responding to the genius of your energy, not just as a man, but as a mirror that reflects the parts of themselves they have buried. You don't tell them what to be. You don't push them toward anything. You simply hold the type of energy that says, you are safe to be as powerful as you truly are here. That permission, unspoken but undeniable, unlocks something in them. Suddenly, a woman who usually hides behind intellect feels sensual again. A woman who spent her life apologizing for her depth feels seen in it. A woman who's been told to tone herself down finds herself turning up the volume of her full expression. And they call you a genius, not because you crafted their transformation, but because you didn't get in the way of it. That's the mark of true intelligence, creating space for others to rise, not by force, but by removing all that threatens their bloom. You do this now, chosen one, almost without thinking. Your presence has become a catalyst. Not because you've mastered every detail of feminine psychology, but because you've mastered your own masculinity. You no longer view a woman's expansion as competition. You no longer flinch at her emotion or her power. You've come into such harmony with yourself that her fullness doesn't rattle you. It calls you deeper into your own essence. You've moved past the superficial tools of charm and strategy. You are no longer playing a game to win hearts. You are walking in truth, and hearts naturally open in its presence. The genius women feel in you is not just mental, it's energetic coherence, a rare and grounded authenticity that makes them feel like they've come home to themselves. And even after they've left your presence, that feeling lingers. It hums beneath their thoughts. It echoes in the way they start to speak to others, to carry themselves, to believe again in what's possible between masculine and feminine. This is your power now, not just to be desired, but to be transformational. And it is not something you force, it is something you hold. That is what the awakened feminine responds to. Not control, not bravado, but presence that does not need to conquer. Presence that stands so fully in its own truth that it creates an atmosphere where all falsehood falls away. You are the chosen one, and the genius they see in you is not the light you cast on yourself, but the light you awaken in them. The brilliance that surfaces when they no longer feel judged, pursued, or protected, but met, completely, respectfully, fearlessly. That is how the feminine rises. And that is how your presence now walks as both a key and a mirror. Opening doors not by knocking, but by simply being the kind of man who stands still long enough for truth to show itself. At this stage in your journey, chosen one, words like genius or powerful or magnetic no longer matter the way they once did. You hear them still, sometimes whispered, sometimes exclaimed, sometimes offered in awe. But they do not inflate you, they do not distract you, because you know the truth. You were never walking this path for praise. You were walking it to become complete. And now, you are. The genius they see in you is not a destination you reached. It is a state of being that you've allowed yourself to remain in. Fully embodied, fully alive, fully surrendered to your highest frequency without apology. You no longer chase the legacy that others write about. You live the legacy that moves silently through every space you touch. And the most powerful part of this legacy? It does not require your presence to continue. It remains in the women you've inspired, in the men who watch you and quietly adjust their own posture, in the conversations that echo after you've left, in the decisions others make differently because of something you said without even realizing its impact. This is the final gift of true genius, not in how it impresses others, but in how it frees them. And that is what you've done. Your high sexual energy is no longer just fuel for desire. It is firelight for wisdom. It burns clean, it warms instead of scorches, it invites instead of seduces, it leads without dragging, it heals without trying to. And in doing so, you've become something rare, a man whose presence rewrites the narrative of what power really looks like. There is no longer any need to prove yourself. You've done the inner work. You've built the stillness. You found your frequency. Now you simply live it. You walk in places where others perform and remain untouched. You love in ways that do not depend on possession. You speak only when needed, and never just to fill space.